Roastar packaging is continually innovating. They aren't where they were more than a decade ago when they won Best New Product at San Diego's Coffee Fest. They've actually gotten better, driven by their 5-step plan. Step 1, make better packaging. Step 2, make it domestically. Step 3, make it easy for small business owners. Step 4, make it look awesome. Step 5, world domination. It's working, as they just won Best New Product at Coffee Fest New York for their new peel and stick valved tin closure. That's hard to say, but it's a win for Roastar and a win for small business. On roastery.com, you can use their artwork templates to enable you to imagine your artwork, your logo, on a sleek coffee bag, classic tin, sticker, or label. Roastar has been and is tipping the scales to favor solo entrepreneurs and small businesses, using digital printing to offer faster turnaround times and smaller print runs for coffee roasters. In short, Roastar can help and grow your business. And on roastery.com, you can start with a quote and end with the perfect coffee package to share your story. Now, on to the show. Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Season 10, Episode 5 of the Coffee People Podcast, which is part of the Roast West Coast Coffee Network and presented by Roastar Coffee Packaging. I'm Ryan Woldt, and this is the show where we meet really compelling human beings from all corners of the coffee industry, and then we share their story. We're halfway through the season, and frankly, cruising along. Literally. If you're listening to this the day it drops, I'll be somewhere on the highway between Nebraska and Illinois, headed for the Specialty Coffee Association Expo in Chicago, where besides meeting a bunch of new coffee people, I'll get to meet some of this season's guests, including James Harper, Brandon Seabrook Nelson, Heather Kelly, and Miranda Caldwell, but in real life. If you haven't listened to those episodes yet, be sure to add them to your queue. They're good. Trust me. Unfortunately, not on that list are this week's conversation partners, Dennis Garsinii and Shane Himmelman, the co-founders of the West African Farmers Initiative, or WAFI Coffee. Although from the sound of things, coffee is just the beginning of their effort to showcase the farmers of West Africa. Before we get into the pod, please do us a solid and follow the newsletter that accompanies this show at coffeepeoplepodcast.com. That's coffeepeoplepodcast.com. You'll find these shows, key takeaways, coffee education, and so much more there, including the link to waficoffee.shop online and their WAFI Coffee Instagram. Okay, there is something in the air this morning. I can smell the collective coffee essence of thousands of coffees being brewed on the SCA convention floor tomorrow. It's so impactful. It is traveling backwards through time to reach me here on the road. The team from WAFI Coffee hopes to be just as impactful on the world as it sees the farmers of West Africa. Let's learn more with Dennis and Shane of the West African Farmers Initiative, also known as WAFI Coffee.
So I'll go first. My name is Shane Himmelman. I'm one of the co-founders and owners of the company.
And I'm Dennis Garsinii. I'm also a co-founder of WAFI, owner of the company as well.
And just so we get it right at the top, it's waficoffee.shop. WAFI is WAFI. We'll have all those links in the show. I'm really excited to learn more about what you guys do. I read an article about you in Eater magazine, which I'll link to as well. But I want to get started with a little bit about the two of you. Did you, either of you or both of you, have an experience with coffee, like a first experience that made you think, this is something I'm interested in?
I guess honestly, we both come from like a trading background, trading commodities, trading equities, all sorts of things like that. And coffee and cocoa were just kind of the few things we decided to like dive deeper into as far as like following the, origin and like supply chain and stuff like that. But other than that, I had no other like exposure to coffee or anything. I've never even worked as like a barista or anything. So
How about you, Dennis?
Yeah, same thing. I have experience working at trading firms where we specialize in global commodities, which dealt with a lot of coffee, cocoa, soft commodity goods. And on the back end, I'm mostly on the physical side. My family's always been growing coffee and cocoa in our family well over 300 years now, but it's always been a secondary crop. We were big into the rubber, but both my grandparents on my mom's side and my dad's side, it's something that we always did, just like grow, like a plot of plantain or a plot of coffee and a plot of cocoa. So I decided to really take it more serious after 2020. And then like Shane and I just went all in, started like a little nursery and like really try to revamp the coffee end. But barista and everything like that, no, like I was, I've never been a coffee shop person.
Yeah.
So
You said that your family is growing things or has some sort of farming experience. 300 years, I can't track my family back that far. So first of all, that's really cool. Where is this that they're growing? Where is this farm at?
yeah, this is located in a country in West Africa called Liberia. And this is near the northeastern part of the country, or central part of the country, rather, called Bong County, or Bonga, as we say. But the coffee region from that area typically comes from this place called Lofa County, which is same thing, northeastern region, which is the highest elevated part of the country, which makes sense of why coffee grows there.
Did you have a connection to this farm growing up? I mean, obviously getting into an entirely different career and now coming back to it, but was this kind of part of your origin story as far as like, oh, my family's part of this farming community?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely started there. I don't think any of my grandparents or my cousins ever thought of farming again. It just never was in our head because we started to go to school, get jobs in the city, do stuff like that. So it really drove us away from the agricultural part. But in our back of our heads, we always knew we had to maintain that place when they're gone. And so that's where we are right now, is really trying to tap into coffee and cocoa, which are enormous markets. At the same time, bring a species that's really not to the market as well. So it's just everything was lining up, and that's why we decided to really launch this coffee and cocoa endeavor.
Well, you and Shane, I'm assuming, meet at work. What on earth made you think I'm going to stop doing this commodities thing? Which my experience with commodities is really like old movies, like Trading Places, which were probably
Yeah.
not accurate. What made you think, hey, we're doing this thing, but we're going to get out of that? We're going to switch gears into something that we maybe don't have as much experience in right away.
So we actually were roommates in college. That's where we originally met. We just both shared like a passion for all things financial markets and economics, and we always just kept in touch, kind of doing like managing portfolios together. And we got into like gold and silver, physical for a little bit, some land, and then one day, you told us one day we were just like,
Yeah, I think it went. We were very heavy on the equity side. Managing equities was something that we both went to school for and studied on it was like our passion. And there just became like a time period where during COVID where we, put what we were doing to the test and see, is this what we should be doing, or should we take it a step further, or like, do we really develop something new? Is it following on the market? It just looked like the market was heading towards a commodity heavy world, and just making sure people, know where their goods are coming from. And in the same respect, customers are very conscientious now of their commodities. That's the most thing that they are really trying to trace back to the root, single direct origin. So again, it's just really all lined up for us to get back into the commodity good. Equities are so derivative. They're like, not a lot of people understand them because they're stocks of companies, but, commodities are stocks too, but of the world, and that's why that like bridge or transition really happened to the commodity world.
yeah, I guess just pure interest in like you start trading something, you start learning more about the supply chain, you start realizing the issues in the supply chain. You're like, wow, I could really fix this. And then it just lined up with not only our interests, but then, the land that we had in Africa. We were like, all right, let's just, it seems to be the time. Let's just go full blown into the physical side.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a big jump, I think, from trading commodities to doing something that requires physical labor and is hands-on. Coffee farming is not easy. I mean, it's still farming.
Yeah.
And then here you're starting a company, which, my first exposure to it was a bicycle cafe in the Los Angeles area.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Like, I mean, how long did it take for you to get this company launched, get coffee in your hands, and then think, how do I get this to the people?
Yeah. I think that happened end of last year. We
Yeah.
were just, we knew we wanted to trade commodity. I relocated to California, and to trade green bean, which is our forte, was very difficult to move it from across the Atlantic Ocean and then across the states again. So we knew that we had to stay in coffee, but maybe in a different supply chain area. And that was fresh to consumer, straight to consumer, serving as a barista. And that's when we were like, all right, let's get a cart and serve on the street. And it just all made sense. We saw a bicycle cart. We're like, let's get that. That's perfect. Put an espresso machine on top of that. Bring our coffee beans over here and just crank it on the street.
That's a level of optimism that I think in my, let's call it older age, I'm so jaded. I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to deal with permits and all this stuff in Los Angeles and work for that. It seems like you were able to just say, this is the thing. It makes sense. We're moving forward. What about the branding? What about the WAFI coffee name? What does that story mean to you? And what is it that you're trying to convey to like someone who walks up to your bicycle cart?
So the name is West African Farmers Initiative, and we're really just trying to restore value to farmers one good at a time from West Africa. Like that's kind of our quick summary what the goal is.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to be, it could be Dennis and Shane's coffee company, something like that. But we really wanted to tie the production side so heavy onto the demand, the consumer side. And so creating an initiative where farmers are marketing their own coffee it just needed to happen. And again, there's so many parts of the supply chain and so many middlemen. Just starting a band of farmers where we have all different flavors come together and sell in a cart, it just made more sense to go with an initiative, like a coalition.
Yeah,
sure.
And so for sure, it just made sense as well when people said WAFI, it's like coffee. So next thing you know, it's just like
you just kind of
pulls out the tongue.
Yeah.
That's the brand. You launched the business with a crowdfunding effort. Why go that route?
Being in the financial industry, we've come to have a lot of experience with is road shows, when you have to go around and pretty much market your company when you're about to financial institutions, really to get funding for them to get behind it. And in this way, this was a roadshow for us, letting people know you are also a part of what we're doing with this initiative. We are just facilitators. We are the custodians, the engineer of this train. That's what we always say. We want people to say, hey, and it's still open. That's the greatest part, is that we want people to know that they're seeing money that they're putting toward, and they're seeing the good that's on the street that they really develop. And it's a commodity. It's something that's not like a company or service. It's an actual good that they're working towards. And we just buy the tools and equipment for these farmers. And then, they see the production or the end good from it.
Just so I understand that right, you said you're using that crowdfunding, you launched your company, but also to help on the farm side of it, improve the product over there and how they're working.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And we also, on like a business standpoint, thought it would be a good way to test the market without really any upfront risk, right? If we put this out here and people want to donate to it, then our idea is validated, right? It's kind of on from a business side, anyways.
I ran a crowdfunding or two in my day, and but there's always this kind of excitement and energy when they launch, and so it's maintaining that through the entirety of it and getting to where you need to go.
Yeah.
Once you decide to do this and you've moved forward enough that you have some coffee, where's this green coffee getting roasted? And then what were those first days like where you were the barista, or you were somebody who was out there making coffee for someone?
Yeah, it was so funny. We at first had a farmer for the espresso. We knew we needed Arabica coffee. And so going back to West Africa, the only area in West Africa that really has Arabica bean is Cameroon. And there's a cooperative out there called Ashan's, a farmer that we know we've worked with for 3 or 4 years now. He sells his coffee here in the stateside as well. So he's like, hey, and back when we first met him, he did not at all. And watching him grow in the last 3 years and from a farmer having your product here was great. He was like, hey, take some of our coffee. I have a roaster that roasts my coffee. If you want to work with them to have it roasted to you, or if you guys want to roast it for yourself, be my guest. And we work with them to get it perfect. They introduced us to this new method of air roasting it. And they're like, it's what we think is going to be good for your bean. We trusted them in what they give us, and it's been phenomenal for the machine. So it's it's crazy. The supply chain is so intricate, so small, but yet just watching it go from that farmer to these roasters, it's introducing us to roasters now, to the consumer. It's been so cool to see the whole thing unwind.
What about that first barista experience? You mentioned neither of you have had experience in that before. Was there nerves? Were you worried about it? Were you prepared for what it's like to actually be out on the side of the road with your cart? How did that go?
When we launched, I was actually in Romania. So I wasn't working the car, but I can say I was nervous for him. I couldn't even imagine. But I mean, from my point of view, it went great. I don't know,
it was nerve wracking at first. I don't serve coffee, but I've watched a couple of videos over the time and really learned how to make it, how it works. And I feel sorry for the people who tried it at first and was like, "What is this?" But thank you supporting me. It must have been crappy, but over time, it's like everything. You just learn new methods and learn it and really dial in. And as far as I'm concerned, people are like, your shots are being poured great. So I'm doing something right.
It was also motivating. We got really, really good feedback, like right from the jump. So that always helps.
Yeah. What have you learned? I mean, not specifically about your coffee techniques, but about the business more so. Things that you needed to adjust as you've gone over. What you've been open? What, about a year? I want to make.
No, we've been doing WAFI has been official for like the last 3 months. I think is when we started like this whole new aspect of it. So we've definitely learned a lot, though. I mean, basically, just like for me, the biggest thing is you got to be like liquid. Things are always changing all the time. Like you're always going to have problems, whether it's at the port or a power supply, or, oh man, I'm out of cups and they're out of cups. Like it's just always, you just really have to be on your toes, I guess. Chance favors the well prepared is what I would say.
Well, and you've had an interesting California winter for weather as far as being out serving. How are you communicating where you're going to be, when you're going to be open to people?
Yeah, I've been using my social media platform and going to stories right before I go out, a couple of hours before, like when they wake up, they're going to see where I'm going to be that day. Typically, it's in the same, like a mile radius from each other, limited to the west side of LA. But people have always been like, put a schedule out, and it's something that we're trying. But for right now, we do like this fact of like a drop in a say, and posting where we're going to be at that given time is there's something cool to it. I like.
How do you see this business growing? How do you see this? Obviously you're in the very burgeoning stages of it. Is the cart the end game, or what is the end game or the future of what you're doing?
So the cart was pretty much just like for introductory, right? It's kind of like a way to market, just kind of get your name out there. We moved into events. We've had a lot of successful events with like Aloe Yoga and Lululemon recently. We also started selling e-commerce. Right now we're in New York, and the plan is pretty much just get our cold brew into all different bodegas and stores and stuff, and then just keep scaling and scaling.
Mm-hmm. I saw that the cold brew, I saw some social media about that. How did you get started doing the cold brew? What was the motivation for that, as opposed to just here's our coffee beans from West Africa?
Yeah, so we didn't know. There's a lot of coffee forms, and people digest coffee in different ways, and that's when we are thinking, even still, do we do K-cups or dehydrated form or instant coffee form? The customer has been letting us know what they like, always coming to the cart. Hey, do you have, instant coffee, or do you have this, so and so? I'm like, oh, wow, I guess that's what they want, so it's adapting to what they need. It's just been super difficult.
You mentioned just a minute ago that you're in New York now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How would you say the scene of coffee is different between New York and LA? And I asked this a little bit selfishly, as I just got back from New York on Wednesday.
Oh, nice. Whereabouts?
I was staying off of 29th and 7th, but Just a quick visit.
Yeah, Hell's Kitchen
I
area.
would say people here care more about the product and less of the story. Unfortunately, right? Everyone's in a hurry. They're just like, give me my good coffee at a good price, like whatever. That's great, awesome. In LA, it seems a lot more about like brand identity and like things like that.
I would say that's pretty accurate. I mean, as a someone who moved to California from New York, I definitely think there was more of there's the coffee shop or the little cafe in New York feels like it's got to be cool and hip and whatever, but it's got to be fast and efficient.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're probably not spending a lot of time talking to someone there. Whereas here, like, I know like the name of every barista at all my local places, and I know what they do, and we talk, and there's just more of a back and forth. So
Yeah.
I love comparing those two. What comes next? Obviously, you're adjusting, you're adapting. But if you were to say we're going to come back on this show a year from now, where's WAFI Coffee? What would be the dream?
Yeah, West African coffee. Well, it's just more so the West African farmers, right? So we've been thinking what they produce, and they've also been letting us know, hey, we would love our honey or our more of our cacao on the market, and these different and nuts, cashews, pistachios. They're growing a lot of these goods that they are very very great quality that we also want to bring them on the market. So we want to, like Shane said earlier, this was more of an introduction to what the West African farmers have for you. And right now it's coffee, but down the line, it is a Garden of Eden. It really produces some phenomenal commodities that we want to bring to the consumer directly. And that's going to be mostly e-commerce or on our bike. What you may have it, that's up to us to really figure out how we're going to distribute it. It's always going to be that direct farmer to customer template or
We were thinking maybe is getting another cart going in New York, as well as maybe another one in LA in another area. We do have tentative plans somewhat to open up like a brick and mortar location, but it's going to be somewhere in Italy. It's not going to be in the States. But as far as coffee, like that's kind of what we got going for coffee. But like he said, our main goal is just getting these high quality goods from the West African farmers into the consumer and kind of sharing their story and things like that.
One question I'm thinking of as we're talking, and I'm just responding to your willingness to say, "Hey, we're just going to figure this out as we go." Did you hit any roadblocks that you've thought at the point where you hit them, say whether it was in importing or shipping or something, where you said, "Man, I don't know if we can get past this," or was there something that stood out to you as a challenge in this beginning phase?
We have moments like that every day. I'll keep it completely honest with you. Every day you're waking up and it's just like, all right, I got a list of fires to put out. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but we always figure it out.
Yeah. It's risk management at the end of the day. We can always say we want to do something, but like, for example, bringing a ton of coffee over here, you're just shipping in itself has so much red tape. And you're like, for all these agencies and government officers to really check off at the same exact time, what's the odds of it happening in a good window? And it's always never, right? And that's I think the biggest part of it is waiting for people or having to have a third party be part of something where you have to do in the future. It's just so difficult, but
it's what we're here for.
Yeah, exactly.
When that happens, what keeps you going? What motivates you? How do you support each other in that moment?
I think we're just calcified in the brain right now to just not take no. We're just
it's just we're too far in, like, and honestly, like it's like we always keep saying, it's about the farmers.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like we are doing this for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's definitely a big motivator. And then other than that, I guess we're just too stubborn to quit. It's something we're passionate about. We're too far in. So there's no, like, you figure it out. Like there's no other really way around it.
When you go out for a cup of coffee tomorrow, if you drink coffee or whatever you drink, what are you going to order?
Usually just black iced coffee or a black hot coffee. Like occasionally I like a little bit of honey in it occasionally, but yeah, pretty simple.
How about you, Dennis?
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. Black coffee with honey. Something about it. It's so good.
Anything that I missed today? Is there anything that people should know about the West African Farmers Initiative that we didn't ask or we didn't cover?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, understanding that the stuff, we're not trying to disrupt what farmers do here, right? It's just shedding light on a corner of the world where people really don't see. And not only that, it's there's fundamentally things wrong with what they receive after. And a lot of things that consume here. Like we produce 80% of the cocoa over there. And just by the market value and the revenue these companies see alone, I'm not saying pay your fair share or anything like that, but it's fundamentally broken in the way that the farmers really benefit from one of our biggest industries in the world right now. So it's just asking questions, I guess, is the biggest thing we want people to do, is when they're always thinking about the chocolate and coffee, is these farmers and what they have to go to get your cup of coffee to you.
Yeah, asking questions about your product. Do you guys have any companies or innovators, anyone that motivates you or that inspires you in this, that you kind of look to and say, oh, well, if they can do it, we can do it?
I mean, I wouldn't say that are in like the coffee industry directly. No.
Who would you say?
I wouldn't say. I mean,
well, any industry. I mean, because when you mentioned thinking about and asking questions about the product,
Yeah.
I immediately thought of like, okay, here's 2 or 3 companies that I know of that I look to because I think they have shown they're willing to at least do it a better way or try to find. Tony's Chocolati or Chocoloni is like a brand that advertises themselves as a cocoa company that cares about the supply chain, right? That's their thing.
I would say, I guess we're going to go in an industry and people we've met that come to mind, Crop to Cup. I don't know if you're familiar with them. I think what they're doing is amazing.
Yeah, they're very great. They're also that directory or index for coffees from around the world, but the way they give it to you, it's like almost like an order form, and you get everything you need to really get coffee, really bridging that gap. They're great. I would say Pachamama Coffee, they are the same thing, but in South America. These farmers, own their own coffee shop, and they're really giving the customers their product, which is the ideal model.
Very cool. Well, Shane, Dennis, thanks for coming on the show and taking some time out of a entrepreneurial day, which I'm sure is chaotic and stressful. And I heard the sirens, and I just imagine that's what it's like in your brains all the time.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah, it gets like that.
But I certainly appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the next couple of years bring for WAFI Coffee.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us on. Appreciate it.
Okay, some key takeaways from the pod. Shane and Dennis have an easy rapport. When I'm chatting with them, they're sitting side by side, and I can hear the sounds of New York City in the background. It isn't hard to imagine them brainstorming across the room late at night, as their enthusiasm for the idea of starting a coffee company ramps up. These guys were not coffee guys, at least not at the start. They were looking for an opportunity, and they found it in the coffee and farming community that Dennis's family has been part of for over 300 years in Liberia, which you'll find on the map on the coast of West Africa, squarely in the coffee-growing belt. Even if you're not familiar with the country or the geography, you may have heard of Coffea liberica, the coffee species native to the region, which has since been naturalized in coffee-growing communities around the world, including Colombia, the Philippines, and so on. Despite its expansion, it is not as commonly known as its cousins Arabica and Robusta. Dennis's family history ties him and WAFI Coffee to the land, despite more recent familial generations leaving for school and jobs in larger communities. He mentioned that there was always the seed in the back of his mind that he'd somehow be responsible or involved in the farming legacy at some point. With his college roommate and friend Shane, they decided that time is now, and they're starting with coffee and cocoa. Why now, you may ask? For starters, COVID motivated them to take a wider view of what they were doing in the world, and more specifically, in their careers as commodity traders, bringing attention to a lesser-known farming community that they have a direct connection to gave them the opportunity to continue to trade on their skills and begin to offer more fulfillment on a personal level. In their words, they're trying to restore value to the farmers, one at a time, in West Africa, by keeping the focus and brand attention on the farmers. WAFI, and the coffee cart they operate, is their current MVP, or most valuable product. But the future is wide open. I'll link to that Eater article, WAFI's online store, and their social media in the newsletter on coffeepeoplepodcast.com and in this podcast show notes. You should be able to find them wherever you're listening. Since you'll be online anyway, you may as well follow the newsletter that accompanies this podcast at coffeepeoplepodcast.com. That's our show for today. Thank you for listening to the stories of coffee people, for being inspired by their entrepreneurial efforts, and supporting this podcast by listening, sharing, and sometimes choosing the paid newsletter option. Helping bring us that episode and this one is this podcast's presenting sponsor, Roastar Coffee Packaging, found at roastery.com. We're also supported by some great coffee industry partners. Our legacy partners include Zumbar Coffee and Tea, Steady State Roasting, Moster Coffee, Coffee Cycle Roasting, Maria Coffee, and Cape Horn Green Coffee Importers. A special thank you to Alden at Crossings Coffee, who I just met for a cup this morning, and the Hales brothers at Hosea Coffee Source, who I'm meeting later this week, who've been supporting our Coffee Smarter efforts. We have a new full city partner, Cozy Canine Coffee, based in San Diego. They've been on our radar for a long time, and one of the best things about being an indie podcast is having the ability to partner with roasters that align our values and missions. Cozy Canine Coffee definitely fits that bill. They serve the San Diego community by sharing high-quality and approachable coffee and use that platform to generate support and spread awareness for local animal rescue organizations. It's working. My wife and I adopted our dog Keto from a local humane society last year after I chatted with Cozy Canine Coffee's founder, Carolyn Menintum. Head to cozycaninecoffee.com to learn more about their mission and order some coffee. The rest of our great full city partners include Ignite Coffee Company, Ascend Coffee Roasters, Ascento Coffee Roasters, Civets Roasting Machines, San Franciscan Roasters, Me and My Uncle Coffee, and Craft 42 Coffee Roasters. That's all for today. Hit me up on Instagram at RoastWestCoast. Let's go get a cup of coffee together somewhere. This show, the Coffee People Podcast, is part of the Roast West Coast Coffee Network. This episode has been written, produced, and recorded by me, Ryan Woldt. I hope this episode has found you happy, healthy, and with at least a thread of sanity left, enabling you to make it through the day. Always tip your baristas and be sure to drink good coffee. If you are in the early stages of your coffee journey, we want to support you. Check out the Coffee Smarter Education podcasts. Coffee Smarter is designed to enable coffee drinkers to brew a better cup of coffee at home. And Coffee Smarter Pro covers industry-specific topics for baristas, roasters, shop owners, and aspiring coffee professionals. You'll find both shows on your favorite podcast platforms or on our website at coffeesmarterpodcast.com.